So, folks, I wanted to talk about the fact that the Democratic Civil War is currently underway, and I think it is, in fact, somewhat heating up, as it were, right? And one of the reasons I say this is because there is a kind of shift in the rhetoric that Democrats are deploying against Republicans. There's a shift in the policies Democrats are beginning to deploy against Republicans. And also, there is some explicit battle lines being drawn within the Democratic Party against what the establishment views as too far left, right? And I wanted to talk about this because I do think that there is some positive movement happening. And we need to talk about the fact that a lot of folks that are currently considered relatively normie libs, many of you are familiar. I've referenced the meme Evelyn Normie Lib before. I should probably throw that up. Okay, Evelyn Normie Lib. Yeah, here we go. Right, you've got Evelyn Normie Lib, right? Retired teacher who voted for Buttigieg in 2020 because he reminds her of her grandson. Quote, "The blood of the tyrant shall water our fields." All right. And just like a sweet old grandma in Michigan standing in front of a "in this house we believe" sign. Right. And I think that there are a lot of people right now in the Democratic base who, despite the fact that they are liberal, are extraordinarily angry. And that anger is going to manifest as political action, right? It's going to manifest as marches, as protests, as sit-ins, as, political action, both very visible, as well as action when it comes to attending meetings, speaking out at different gatherings of the local Democratic Party, for example. And that, in fact, does trickle up. It's part of why I advocate every single stream, every single video for you guys to get involved in your local Democrats, because you guys deserve to be in on that conversation too. The left deserves to be in that conversation as it happens, instead of an external force. When we look at this, right, I see a change happening, right? And I wanted to reference this first because this is kind of what got my mind going on this train, which is this interaction between the official Democrats account on Twitter and Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller responds to a post from the Democrats saying, "Fired up, ready to go. It's time to take back Texas." And Stephen Miller says, "The Democrats made history in Texas by nominating their first transgender Senate candidate." And the Democrats account responds, "Shut up, you ugly fuck." Which, I gotta be honest, A+ response. A+ response. Well done. Good job. Okay? That's the kind of thing that should be deployed all the time, everywhere from Democrats. All right? And because the opportunity we had to deploy rhetoric like "they're weird" has kind of passed, right? I do still think there's a place to call them weird. Stephen Miller is certainly that. You just have to look at him for like 5 seconds on any kind of interview, and he's weird as hell. On top of that, you see this escalation of rhetoric on the right as well. Here, the right is just so desperate to bury any kind of challenge to conservative power that they're really throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks at this point, right? Here is the RNC chair, whose name is Joe Grutters. What a name. Fucking Grutters. And by the way, I do have to say, if I've ever seen a man that looks like his name was Grutters, it's this guy. All right? But listen to him talking about Tallarico here.
Because Tallarico is a creep, and he thinks he's a vegan. He thinks God is non-binary. He wants to mutilate children. He wants to put boys in girls' locker rooms. People are done with that. If you looked at the autopsy the Democrats put out, it's simple. All those things and the fact that they are openly supporting communists and socialists. People don't want the United States Senate. Certainly the voters in Texas don't want that. We think Paxton will win. We think it's a red seat. Hands down, we're not going to have any issues heading into November. We're happy with Paxton, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure he's successful.
Well, you touched.
That'd be his talent.
Also, just like, okay, the best attack you have on him is Talafrico, and that he's a vegan. Like, you literally have nothing. Like you've got nothing. Oh, he's a vegan, and he wants to mutilate children. And I gotta be honest, anyone who watches Talarico talk for like 2 seconds understands that no, he's not running as like a child mutilator. Like, that's not who he is or what he advocates for. Like, the idea that you can just fabricate whole cloth the idea of James Talarico as a crazed, like, child chopper, like, it just doesn't work. Like, he's just clearly not that. Now, of course, there are going to be some, like, raving lunatics on the right who are going to eat that up because they've been acclimated to the slop that they live in constantly. But to any, like, independent, they're going to be like, what the fuck? That's crazy. Anyway, I'm going to go vote for Talarico, right? And it is quite clear to me that Republicans are panicking because James Talarico has a good shot at potentially winning. Like, his numbers compared to Paxton are, I mean, it's heartening, to say the least. I'm not saying it's not going to be a contest. I'm not saying it's not going to take some organizing work. But I am going to say that Talarico seems to have a pretty decent edge when it comes to these things. And I say that based on this polling. This is from late April, right? New poll, Talarico leads both Cornyn and Paxton in Texas Senate general election. And you can take a look here. Talarico actually did worse going up against Senator John Cornyn. He actually gains by going up against Ken Paxton. This is actually the better outcome. Like, Paxton winning the runoff was bad for Republicans. And they know that, which is why they are suddenly in a panic to attack Talarico. And it is, I don't know. I find it interesting, of course, that this is happening. But it is also happening because very clearly Republicans are just openly evil in Texas, right? Like, just openly, like, rubbing their hands together while writing checks out to their biggest donors in Texas. And I say that because, again, you can just look at local Texas media. Here's the Texas Tribune. Governor Greg Abbott vetoes funding for federal summer lunch program for low-income children. Literally, Greg Abbott is over here starving children so he can give more money to his donors, right? Like, that's the political landscape for Republicans in Texas. And there's a not insignificant number of Texans who are fed up with this shit. Who are fed up with this, right? Like, Greg Abbott is over here, like, fucking over children, and Ken Paxton, meanwhile, is over here pardoning literal pedophiles. I mean, like, you are setting up Talarico for such an incredible victory right here. It's insane. This is from a recent interview Talarico did.
Ken Paxton, your opponent, has taken to calling you Talafrico.
Well, I think if Ken Paxton is worried about freaks, he should stop giving Epstein-style sweetheart deals to pedophiles. You know, this is the guy who just released Adam Hoffman from jail and admitted child rapist after one of Ken Paxton's wealthy lawyer friends got involved in the case. Ken Paxton even kept him off the sex offender registry. Adam Hoffman was supposed to serve 25 years to life, but instead he served less than a month. As of this week, he's now back on our streets because of Ken Paxton's corruption. Ken Paxton is the most corrupt politician in America, and it is costing Texans. It's endangering our children, and it must end.
They would have unironically done better by talking about how he spends all his time making the Amico and how proud his mom is of him in his Cribs mansion.
I do love that only really makes sense to people who watch the H-Bomber Guy video, but you know what? Enough people did that in my audience that they understood it. They understood the reference, Sake. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. I understood that reference. Appreciate the support. So yeah, essentially here you have Tallarico just being set up to look like genuinely the best guy in this race. You are setting him up to do spike shots on a man who is arm in arm being linked with Epstein reasonably. And that's, I mean, frankly, if you thought you were going to marshal anyone outside the Republican Party to vote for Ken Paxton, this clip alone kills any chances of that, right? We have this massive rumblings going on around the country. And we have folks who are relatively considered, not that big of a threat to establishment Democrats. They're out there throwing some pretty hard-hitting punches. Telling Stephen Miller to go fuck himself, calling their Republican political opponents Epstein defenders. Reasonably, right? Meanwhile, you have the President of the United States basically echoing the rhetoric from Radio Genocide Rwanda in like his normal cabinet meetings.
They're all crooks. The Somalians, what they've done to Minnesota, the Somalians, they're crooked as hell. Ilhan Omar, crooked as hell. They're all crooks. And we got them. Now we're putting the clamps on, but boy, I tell you, that's an impressive group of guys that you have behind you. I was watching that, and a couple of very strong women, too. But
Can we just, take a moment? This is the current leader of the entire Republican Party, and he looks like a stiff breeze would knock him over. He looks weak as hell. He's mumbling out his words, and frankly, a lot of dementia patients wind up saying a lot of wacky, bigoted things, and he's in that stage, It's weird. It's weak. And Democrats are teeing up to take advantage of that weakness, right? More than that, though, what I'm taking notice of are folks who consider themselves liberals who are beginning to talk a lot more like socialists. And I think that that's a really good thing, right? I think it is a good thing for folks in the liberal media in particular and the liberal establishment to start making moves because they feel like they're being forced to, right? One voice I wanted to point to here, and we're going to look at a couple, is specifically Jamel Bowie, who, I'm a socialist, right? I want our economy to transition to a worker-owned and operated model, right? I want workers in this country to have control over their own workplaces, and I'm open to having a more in-depth and nuanced discussion about how that would look, how that functions, etc. But I'm a socialist. Jamel Bowie, as far as I know, is not a socialist. He writes for the New York Times. I find his insight very good, but he's more like a historian and an analyst, and I think he does a really good job at those things, which is why I kind of pay attention to what he says. He put out a video the other day called "The Billionaire Class is Incompatible with Democracy," which is extraordinarily correct. And I want to play at least some of that for you guys, right?
I read a really interesting piece today on California's proposed wealth tax. The piece is in the New York Times. You can read it here. I'll put a GIF link in the description. And the piece is arguing, in essence, that you have to understand that the wealth of billionaires in California, and I'd say generally speaking, is largely submerged from the tax system, meaning that the vast majority of what they make is not counted as regular income. It's capital gains. It's gains from their stock options, from all their investments.
Now, what he goes on to talk about here, to summarize, is effectively how billionaires shield their wealth. Because if you've looked into how billionaires actually create money for themselves and avoid taxation, what they basically do is, instead of getting paid anything, they get given stock, which is not taxed until you sell the stock, right? But then you can take the value of that stock and leverage it by saying, hello, bank, I will give you I will borrow money from you against this amount of stock. And then billionaires just use that as their money. Like, it's effectively a way to pay themselves without paying income tax. It's a way that they get around that. It's a way that they are able to pay less in taxes than you or I, despite owning, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times our wealth, right? And this is a good point, because that's pretty messed up. It's effectively a loophole in participating within society, right? And if we were to tax billionaires on the basis of their wealth, we could do things like have Medicare for all quite easily, without having to try and balance the books extensively, right? And I'm going to skip ahead here in the video.
I think that what we'll begin to see in states with these wealth taxes is, first, that claims of all the negatives they'll produce are just nonsense, not true. Second, that they are effective, that they do what they're meant to do, which is raise money and provide for critical services.
And again, he's going on to talk about how the wealth tax in California has been a big to-do. It's been hotly debated, but it actually makes quite a lot of sense to tax billionaires on their wealth when they are taking advantage of loopholes to avoid paying taxes, right? And he points to other states that have wealth taxes and have not suffered this deluge of consequences from having wealth taxes, and allows states to do things like repair roads and basically function quite a bit better while raising billions of dollars in funds for public works projects.
It'll help build the kind of momentum I think will be necessary for passing a federal wealth tax, for actually making sure that the people who benefit from this country pay into the common pool so that others may benefit in the future. That's all this is. It's a recognition that, in the words of Barack Obama in 2012, you didn't build that.
You didn't build that.
And so you have to pay taxes. And if we cannot collect taxes through ordinary income because you are so extraordinarily wealthy that you don't really ever have to count ordinary income, then we'll collect taxes through some other means that will ensure that you're paying in to the common pool. This isn't punishment. This is just what we do as members of a society.
Now, I see people in the vertical chat having questions about how socialism works. I'm absolutely happy to take those questions after we finish this segment.
I think it's also worth saying that taxes on the super wealthy are necessary just to prevent super wealth from distorting the political system. Ultimately, in fact, I think that is the purpose of high taxes on the super wealthy.
Exactly. This was the point at which I was like, oh, okay, we are talking about something very different from what a lot of liberal pundits talk about, right? Because a lot of liberal pundits won't address the fact that taxation is a mechanism to deny billionaires the kind of power accumulation that they could use to, say, topple the state, right? It is, in fact, a good thing. It is a stabilizing force to have a taxation method that aims at the top to make sure that no one person is accumulating the amount of power, the amount of wealth necessary to function as a king or an oligarch over our country. We live in a democracy. We do not live in a country with kings. We do not live in a country that, ostensibly, we do not live in a country that should be controlled by billionaires. And yet, we are so resistant on passing these wealth taxes. Isn't that interesting? Hey, who makes the most political donations in America? Oh, that's right. It's the billionaires. It's the ultra wealthy. Huh, weird how that works, right? Weird how the people giving the most money to influence politics are the wealthiest people to ever exist. And they have created a system for themselves where they just don't get taxed. Unlike you and me. Isn't that interesting? I find that to be interesting. And I think that we should be turning to taxation both out of a matter of course, in order to function as a society, in order to make sure everyone pays their fair share, but also to make sure that as a political entity, our nation isn't overthrown by a would-be dictator, a would-be king.
cannot actually fund a social insurance state, a welfare state, universal health care, what have you, solely through taxes on the wealthy. There are just too many Americans. Those programs are too large. You actually need to have broad-based taxes that affect the middle. And this is why, as I've discussed in this channel, I'm very much opposed to recent Democratic proposals to exempt large numbers of Americans from the income tax.
This is the other thing, right? Because I've been seeing this proposal get steam from folks like Cory Booker, for example. People have been proposing, oh, anyone making under like $60,000 a year should be exempt from the income tax. And I'm against that. And I'm against that because I think that if we all live in this country for as long as we have a country, we should all be, to some extent, contributing to its continuance, contributing to its upkeep. You know, I think that folks should be paying, their fair share. And the problem in society is not that people on the bottom aren't paying their fair share. People on the bottom are paying more than their fair share. It's that the people at the top have abdicated their responsibility to the wider country as well. They are not paying their fair share.
I think it's actually important that we all pay taxes, provided those taxes are going to services that we all benefit from. And if you want a more expansive social insurance state, whether that is stronger social security.
Yeah, like I believe in a sense of civic responsibility. We have a responsibility to one another. We have a responsibility to the common good, every single one of us, no matter how big, no matter how small.
Security, universal health care, universal child care, free college, all these things that I think would make this place, things that I think would make this country a much more humane place, that I think would enable so much more mobility. If you want that kind of society, then we all do need to contribute, whether that's to income taxes or payroll taxes or what have you. So I am opposed, straightforwardly, to, again, these proposals from any number of Democrats, Cory Booker, Chris Van Hollen, that would exempt a lot of Americans from taxation. And it's for a similar reason that the billionaires, they need to pay their fair share of taxes. But additionally, in their case, concentrations of wealth at that level, as we are seeing now, are incredibly dangerous to democracy. They make a mockery of democracy.
And this should be readily apparent, right? Like anyone who pays attention to the news understands that the wealthy get away with crimes that would put a poor person in prison forever. You know, a wealthy person can steal millions of dollars and never see the inside of a cell. A poor person steals $10 or tries to use a $20 forgery. They spend 5 years in prison. You know, like anyone who pays attention to the news, to power dynamics, to who goes to prison, to who is held accountable for their actions, understands the wealthy play by a different set of rules. And they play by a different set of rules because of their money. Because concentrating wealth to the degree we have in our society allows you to avoid consequences, but it also allows you to buy political favors in a way that you and I can't do. You and I can't leverage enough wealth to buy meetings with sitting members of Congress, right? But billionaires can. They absolutely can. And that's a big problem. Because it winds up that they just are, in a sideways manner, buying political favors, corrupting our democracy.
If you, as Elon Musk did, can simply buy a presidential campaign and through that, then buy yourself a cabinet position without any kind of Senate confirmation and use that position to dismantle critical agencies, if you can do that, then we can't meaningfully be called a democracy. You have to put limits on that. And I think that one manner of those limits are large wealth taxes. A basic level of economic fairness, if not economic equality, is necessary for democracy to work. You cannot have a functioning democracy if you have a billionaire class untouched by taxation that can essentially do what it wants. And frankly, from the perspective of the billionaires,
this is where I go, oh shit, Jamal Bowie, come a bit closer. You understand the power dynamic here. Because what he's about to say, is not something that enough pundits in America are talking about. Right? Which is that the reason billionaires of the past, the reason the millionaires of the past, the reason the aristocracy of the past had an idea around noblesse oblige wasn't just out of the goodness of their hearts. It wasn't just because, well, they wanted to be remembered fondly after they passed. It wasn't just because they were swell guys. It was for self-preservation. And Jamel Bouie here, if you read what he's written and what he talks about on the regular, you know he's familiar with his history. But more people need to be.
Democracy, if you will.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs.
Paying some taxes is much better than the alternatives. And if things get bad enough, people do start thinking about the alternatives.
And I find that to be an impressive shift in rhetoric from someone who is, generally speaking, a pretty electorally minded individual, right? And when you get people who are relatively lib folks, I don't think that Jamel Bouie is a socialist. Maybe he's hiding his power level. I don't know. Maybe he's a democratic socialist. Who can say? But he's got a good head on his shoulders. And I also want people to understand he's not alone in this shift, right? So here is a guest essay in the New York Times titled "The Hard Truth My Party Needs to Face," right? And it's by Chris Van Hollen, who, I got to be honest, seems like he is positioning himself maybe to take a run at, majority leader in the Senate, should the Democrats win the Senate. Democrats need to face a hard truth. While Republicans' approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has failed, so has ours. The Democratic Party has provided reflexive and unconditional support to Israeli governments.
I also have no idea how taxes became a demonized concept in Dem rhetoric. Middle and lower class people should pay more in taxes, but receive massive benefits.
Well, and the thing is, Dem rhetoric has embraced neoliberalism, right? It's that Reaganite turn from the 90s and onward. It's the idea that just don't tax the wealthy, let the wealth trickle down. That idea marinated in both the Republican and the Democratic Party for a long time, right? And so it became just common sense within the Democratic Party to say, oh, we're going to cut taxes, because it made them sound like sensible, fiscally minded Republicans. But the reality is, people need the massive benefits more than they need another $50 in their wallet, right? $50 can help you eat for a day or two, but it cannot sustain you as well as something like an infrastructure project that revitalizes your part of the city, right? There are massive investments that need to be made in order to facilitate life in a modern society. And those investments just can't be made if you're cutting taxes all the time. And especially when most of the tax cuts are going to the wealthiest people to ever exist. So, there needs to be an about face on this. But this interested me as well, right? Van Hollen has been one of the better folks within the Democratic Party on Israel, but this op-ed was really interesting to me. For decades, we have called for a two-state solution, but we've failed to use our leverage to make it real. It's past time that we use that leverage to end the occupation and achieve two states with full political and legal rights for all. That means withdrawing taxpayer support from Israel and conditioning arms sales. More of my colleagues are realizing that the status quo is unacceptable. 40 Democrats recently voted to block the transfer of certain military equipment to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, compared to only 15 of us in April of last year. To be clear, I support Israel's need for security, but for too long, most Democrats unquestionably accepted Israel's argument that American weapons are needed and used solely for its defense. We've not yet fully confronted the fact that Israel has used its strength not only as a shield, but also as a sword to bear the two-state solution and advance the far-right's vision of a greater Israel. The evidence on the ground is overwhelming. Violent settlers in the West Bank have attacked Palestinians with impunity, and Israeli forces are increasingly complicit. Israel's de facto annexation of the West Bank has pushed Palestinians into shrinking enclaves. Mr. Netanyahu's government has sabotaged the Palestinian Authority, which, unlike Hamas, has accepted Israel's right to statehood. Anyone who visits the West Bank under Israeli occupation can see an apartheid system at work. Meanwhile, Gaza remains in ruins, the humanitarian situation there remains catastrophic, and Hamas remains armed.
Give a man a socialism and he will produce for a day. Teach a man to socialism and he will seize the means for production for a generation.
Socialism is when the government does stuff.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. But now, while I could quibble with like some of the framing here, like overall, I find it really interesting that he is willing to, as a representative of the US government, admit that effectively Israel does control the West Bank. That is, Israel is de facto running the occupied territories as an extension of Israel itself, right? I've seen these developments with my own eyes. I've visited Israel and the West Bank 7 times and witnessed the rapid expansion of illegal settlements across the land that was supposed to be part of a Palestinian state. I've spoken to Palestinian families pushed out of their homes and off their land. I've sat down with families, both Israelis and Palestinians, who lost loved ones to violence in Ramallah. I spoke with Palestinian American parents who can't get justice for their children killed by violent settlers or Israeli security forces. I've seen aid trucks turned back from Israeli checkpoints while children in Gaza were starving on the other side, and I've seen how the once bustling city of Rafah was reduced to rubble by the Israeli Defense Forces with American bombs and bulldozers. It is these experiences and watching this dangerous trajectory accelerate that have shaped my growing alarm, which the American people increasingly share. They do not want to be complicit in ethnic cleansing in the West Bank or what human rights organizations and scholars have determined to be genocide in Gaza, which is, again, if we did not want to be complicit with it, we never should have gone along with any of these activities in the first place. But we did. We armed their genocide. We armed their ethnic cleansing. We gave them the bulldozers to level entire cities. If we did not want to be complicit with it, it was brutally obvious to members of Congress what was happening. They voted for it anyway. Like I am by this piece, I am upset by the attempt to let some folks off the hook. But I did want to address President Joe Biden failed to reverse most of these actions, even as Israel elected the most extremist government in its history. Moreover, Mr. Biden deprioritized the Israeli-Palestinian peace process upon taking office. And while he was right to affirm Israel's right to defend itself after Hamas's October 7th attacks, he repeatedly failed to use U.S. leverage as Israel imposed devastating collective punishment on the people of Gaza. And now, again, there is like an interesting carve-out here to absolve some responsibility. However, it is also interesting that, a prominent Democrat is putting the blame here quite squarely on Joe Biden. And Joe Biden does deserve that blame. And let's take a look here. Democrats should pursue a last gasp effort to salvage a two-state solution. If that effort fails, the United States will have to consider other options to secure equal political and legal rights for all. The alternatives, either a permanent apartheid state or the expulsion of Palestinians, should be abhorrent and unacceptable to everyone. They would result in the unending oppression or displacement of Palestinians, chronic unrest throughout the region, and Israel becoming a pariah state. Many cynics will rightly roll their eyes when Democrats talk about pursuing a two-state solution. Presidents have paid lip service to that goal even as Israeli settlements stretch into the West Bank. This time must be different. The United States must draw a red line against Palestinian displacement, and we must enforce it. The next Democratic president should recognize a state of Palestine that is subject to clear benchmarks, including free and fair elections. Unless and until a different agreement is reached, the United States should treat Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as part of Palestine. A policy some of our European and Asian partners have already begun to carry out. It's an interesting piece in particular, effectively acknowledging that there could in fact be a single state in de facto at work here, and the idea that, hey, if that's the case,
Puerto Rico's more likely to pursue a two-state solution.
God damn it, Sake. I think this is interesting. For decades, we've called for a two-state solution, but we failed to use our leverage to make it real. It's past time we use that leverage to end the occupation and achieve two states. And I do think that there is an acknowledgement buried in here that what has been happening is our fault, right? It is our fault that we have allowed this genocide to take place. It is our fault that there has been an ethnic cleansing campaign taking place. We've allowed it. We've continued to support it. And the only way out is either by recognizing and forcing Israel to come to a one-state solution where, international folks enforce, egalitarian rights for all within the state of Israel, including Palestinians, or to actually put weight behind the two-state solution, something the United States has never actually done. And so, I don't know, that's a pretty interesting take from one of the most senior and most powerful members of the Senate. It's pretty cool. And you also have folks like even Gavin Newsom, the most spineless squid in the entire Democratic Party, over here proposing like some genuinely decent proposals to counter the Donald Trump slush fund of $1.776 billion for Trump stooges. Yeah, you know what? If they do get payouts from that, 100% taxation. Fuck you. Unironically, I support this. And this is an effort that is going forward in both in California, New Jersey, New York. It's gaining more steam. And I think that is something that every Democratic state should be moving forward on. But let's also talk about how Democrats are turning this machine on one another, right? Because the fight isn't just in this upcoming 2026 midterm battle. It's not just against Republicans. It's also against Democrats on the left, right? In particular, there have been some really interesting attacks in the press on Graham Plattner, who is now the Democratic candidate in Maine, right? Janet Mills dropped out. Graham Plattner is the Democrat running in Maine. We're going to see how that turns out. But I wanted to play a couple of these clips, which aired on Breaking Points the other day that they found on Fox News. I found it to be a pretty great collection of clips. So let's take a look. Also, hi, Ryan.
Very blue district in Massachusetts. The idea that somebody from Massachusetts is going to have influence in Maine without moving there is a little bit comical in its own right. There was one cycle he didn't even have an opponent, but apparently he has thoughts on how to flip a red Senate seat. So here is Auchincloss getting himself in a little bit of trouble with some elements of the Democratic Party.
Find that tattoo and his commentary about it to be personally disqualifying. I hope Maine voters agree with me. I think there would be a mistake for the Democratic Party to think that Graham Plattner's brand of the Democratic Party is what wins us durable majorities throughout this country.
Wow. Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss, thank you so much for being with us.
And so the next day, yesterday, he cleaned up some of those comments and said that, if Graham Plattner does eventually win the
King Fire, you literally used a pronoun in your comment about pronouns.
Fucking pronouns!
Democratic primary, which he hopes he won't, then he will oppose Susan Collins, but he kind of didn't really come out and say that he would support Plattner. You also then had a couple of other Democratic officials kind of agreeing with him. Let's roll F2 here. This is a Biden administration official.
Are his past comments disqualifying for Democrats? And if they're not, should they be?
Well, I agree with Congressman Jake Auchincloss, and he runs a Dem majority PAC, so he spends a lot of...
Oh, well, he runs a political action committee. Well, oh no, the moneyed establishment Democrats don't like an up-and-coming working class guy. Who would have thought?
his time not only representing his district, but also crisscrossing the country, talking to local Democratic coalitions. And so he knows what will get people elected in the Democratic Party. And he's also a Jewish man. So I don't think there's anybody in the Democratic Party who should feel pressure to support Graham Plattner. I certainly don't. And just because Senator Elizabeth Warren says that that's her kind of man doesn't mean that has to apply to everybody. My kind of senators are the ones that come from Georgia, Senator Ossoff and Warnock, and they have different principles and values than Graham Plattner. So I think that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren will just have to carry that themselves.
Which is interesting, right? Like we're seeing former Biden White House press officer going after Graham Plattner. We're seeing some movers and shakers in the in the House establishment, Dems going after Plattner. Like, that's interesting, right? Like, they're trying to throw punches at him. They're trying to go after him right now. They're trying to go for the jugular. And it's honestly, it's just not going to work on someone like Graham Plattner. Like, Maynard is overwhelmingly like Graham Plattner. You know, whatever any individual's beef with him might be, like, they like him. And he's the guy who right now has the best chance to unseat Susan Collins, who, let's be real here, is a terror for the people of Maine and does not give a single fuck about the working class Mainer.
So vote blue no matter who, unless it's somebody you don't like. Another one, Melissa DeRosa, who was a former chief of staff to Andrew Cuomo.
Who are they bleeding him for? Who else is even running in Maine? Well, that's the thing, right? They're willing to try and sabotage Graham Plattner, even if it means that they don't win a seat in Maine, right? They're willing to shoot themselves in the dick for no reason, right? Because folks like Graham Plattner hold policy positions that they find to be an existential threat to what establishment Democrats want to fight for.
Cuomo, famous for many things, or infamous for many things, among them leading a smear campaign against Cuomo's sexual harassment victims. She believes that her ethical compass does not point towards supporting Plattner. Let's roll F3 here.
No, absolutely. I mean, the Maine race really demonstrates the civil war that's happening within the Democratic Party. And there are a lot of Democrats, moderate Democrats like myself, who will not cry tears should we lose Maine. I mean, that would be a pickup to begin with.
Emily, first of all, as Ben Dreyfus pointed out on Twitter,
that clip in particular I wanted to play because, again, really hammering home the point. They do not care if they lose that seat, if it means stopping someone who might be inconvenient to Democratic establishment old hands, right? And she explicitly is talking about the Democratic Civil War, like it's happening right now. Like it's not just me recognizing that there is a battle going on right now politically for the soul of the Democratic Party. That's happening. That is a reality that we live in and with right now. And however it shakes out in 2026, we're going to see it play out on a much larger scale in the primary season for 2028, which is going to kick off right after 2026 finishes. So what I find interesting here is Democrats are doing infighting, of course, but what's telling is how ineffective the infighting is. Like, even when Republicans are trying to attack up-and-coming folks on the left, they're doing an incredibly bad job of it. Here is a absolutely wild exchange between Will Cain and Abdul Sayed in Michigan here, and check this out.
That to me is frustrating. Now, I want to pivot just quickly because I do want to ask you, do you pump your own gas?
Well, before we start talking about whether or not I pump my own gas, we're going to have to follow up with your answer.
It's important.
I appreciate
$185 billion.
I appreciate the interest in having a conversation, Mr. Syed. But what I would suggest is I'm conducting this interview, and I want to ask you about your positions. My interest today is you are running for Senate. No, excuse me. You are running for Senate in the state of Michigan. What I am curious about, as you conduct a tour targeted at counties that voted for both Joe Biden and President Donald Trump, is exactly how extreme or moderate your your positions might be. I'm not running for elected office. So my position on current gas prices is of immaterial to the audience. Your positions as seeking elected office are what's important. And what I would like to figure out is whether or not you believe in the rule of law. It's simply not true that immigration enforcement is simply a civil law. It is in the federal criminal code as well. It is violating the law to come in this country illegally. If you want no enforcement mechanism for it, what I see is you advocating for lawlessness. And when I see you say things like you did on your X feed, one moment, when I see things like you put on your X feed, which you did delete, like immigrants are American, refugees are American, undocumented people are American, either that or the only real Americans are Native Americans, you pick, I see you denying something like the rule of law and the concept of citizenship. And I'm
Jesus. Yeah, it really makes him look so terrible to, reflect the values inscribed on the fucking Statue of Liberty.
I'm curious if that's your proposal to the people of Michigan.
So if we want to talk about law enforcement, I do want to bring up the question about the $1.8 billion Department of Justice piggy bank that Donald Trump wants to hand out to people who clearly broke our laws on January 6th. But I asked the question about gas prices because I happened to pump my gas just on Memorial Day. The worst part of my day was having to pay $82.89. Well, I thought about the fact that we lost more than a dozen service members in a war we never should have been fighting to raise those gas prices in the first place. If you want to talk about the rule of law, there are
Mr.
plenty
Syed,
of opportunities for us to talk about that.
I appreciate your position,
But
and I will summarize it for the audience. You are opposed to the war in Iran, and you do not like the current gas prices. But Mr. Syed, we had a very friendly exchange last week. No, you're not answering my question. Is the entire point. You're pivoting to talking points.
I would like to finish
if you will
my answer. Let me finish
to
my
the
answer.
question I asked, we can have an appropriate interview.
Let me finish my answer. $185 billion for ICE. That's $185 billion that are not being spent to improve anything from your infrastructure to your kid's school or to help you afford your health care. Gas is just the tip of the iceberg. So if you do want to talk about ICE, let's talk about the opportunity cost of paying $185 billion into an agency that is currently sowing unrest in New Jersey, just like it did in Minneapolis.
What is
like
the cost to deny citizenship?
That to me is frustrating.
Like, the reality is deeply inconvenient to folks on the right. You can see Will Cain despair in the middle of that clip that he cannot derail Abdul Sayed from actually talking about the things that people care about. Like, man, if you pump your own gas in this country, it fucking sucks to go fill up your car right now. It sucks. And any right-winger that is coming in and saying, oh no, it's totally fine. You privileged little babies. Like, my God. It sucks. Any reasonable person understands it sucks to pay double today what cost half yesterday. And that change happened entirely because of Donald Trump. That's why Will Cain wants to move away from this as quickly as possible. And yet they're talking about Memorial Day, and Donald Trump has ordered soldiers into combat for no fucking reason other than to make your gas more expensive. And not only, by the way, not only is your gas getting more expensive, your healthcare is getting more expensive, your food is getting more expensive, your automobile parts are getting more expensive. Anything that is shipped last mile to a store is getting more expensive. Because guess what? Your diesel is at fucking record costs right now. Literally everything is more expensive right now because Donald Trump was a big-time dipshit and invaded Iran, threatened Iran, bombed Iran, killed hundreds of school children for no fucking reason. And, all of this that conservatives are falling for the rhetoric of, oh, well, weapons of mass destruction. Man, did you guys not pay attention during Iraq? Did you guys not pay attention? You guys are literally being suckered in by the exact same horse shit. It's wild. Like, are you guys still amazed when, a street magician pulls a quarter out from behind your ear? It's crazy. What childlike wonder. It's incredible. Where is the Democratic Party going to go after this, right? Because, obviously, we have a whole lot of problems right now. And, there's the specter of Rahm Emanuel entering into the 2028 Democratic primary. And I'm frankly worried that the mainstream media is going to prop that guy up.
Rocket production. Weapons of **** destruction.
Well,
Hey, you know what? You know when it's really fun to be railed animalistically by a man who loves you? You have a God-shaped hole.
I will never be absolutely tickled that we have that Steven Crowder sandbit. Who's Rahm Emanuel?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again. George W. Bush.
Rahm Emanuel served in Congress back in I don't remember, for a while, 2003 to 2009 looks like. And then he was the mayor of Chicago until 2019. He was the White House chief of staff for Obama for 2 years. And he's taken a lot of credit for the Democratic shift that happened under Obama. That's kind of his main claim to fame. And it's, frankly, it's bullshit. He's a deeply conservative individual. He was instrumental for the record for Bill Clinton's neoliberal turn when Clinton ran for president in 92. So his entire political philosophy is rancid to the core. And on top of that, he's just not good at politics. He's gross. And he's had major fallings out, plural. Falling outs? He's someone who should stay away from politics forever. And him entering politics in 2028 is nothing more than to try and derail any kind of left challenger. That's it. He's a bad guy, Jack. Yeah, exactly. There's a great piece in Politico. I mean, great relatively, but talking about how, hey, Democrats have a Rahm Emanuel problem. And the problem is the media keeps propping up Rahm Emanuel as if he's a serious contender who has something relevant to say in modern politics. So just be aware that this guy is probably going to throw his hat into the ring within a year to run for president of the United States, and be aware that he's a pretty big piece of shit, as long as we're talking about Democratic Party civil wars, right? That being said, there is a future for the Democratic Party, and it is one that is very clearly spelled out by one of the most popular up-and-coming politicians in America. And I wanted to play for you guys something that aired just 13 hours ago, live. This is Zoran Mamdani talking about housing in New York City, and I wanted to share a little bit of it with you guys.
Live in La Vida Loca, which was the #1 song in the country the last time the Knicks were in the finals. So I began today with a walk through Gowanus, past towers that will soon offer hundreds of affordable homes, past buildings with tenants whose organizing has transformed their standard of living, past Wyckoff Gardens where NYCHA residents are starting to see the change that real investment can bring. It is a privilege to finish that walk here at Powerhouse Arts. I want to acknowledge a number of leaders we have here with us. We have members of my administration, as you can see on stage and across the crowd. We also have our council member, Shahana Hanif, whose district we are in. We have the former council member, Brad Lander, who is here with us as well.
Brad.
We have Michelle De La Luz, the executive director of Fifth Avenue Committee. And I want to give a special shout out to the incredible coalition that's gathered here today, from Housing Justice for All to labor unions, including Local 79 and 32BJ, to Open New York, to tenants unions, to every single New Yorker that is coming here together today. Nearly a century ago, beneath the metro train tracks in East Harlem, 12 miles from where we stand today, James Baldwin was born. His family lived modestly. His father made a living as a factory worker and a Baptist preacher. His mother raised 9 children. But still, they had enough to build a life in New York City, a city they sought out during the Great Migration, a city where opportunity was within reach. Life was not easy, but a better future felt possible, in no small part because they had a home. That home allowed their eldest son to grow up on the same streets as the artists of the Harlem Renaissance, to learn and read in the 135th Street Library, to become one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. Echoes of this story have been heard countless times in homes and apartments owned and rented across the 5 boroughs. When New Yorkers can afford a home, they can afford to dream. Yet the opportunities of the past have drifted out of the present's reach. It is nearly impossible today to find affordable housing in New York City. We face one of the most severe housing crises in American history. It is the single largest driver of the affordability crisis.
Now, I want to really, before we finish, because he's going to be talking for like a little bit here before it goes into other folks talking. But I wanted to pause here because earlier today, I got my hair cut, and I was talking with the folks who cut my hair. They know I do a show, and I was talking with them about it. And I was talking about like, I talk about this, talk about that. And the woman cutting my hair was like, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but that guy in New York, I like him. I think like more of our politicians should be like him. Like, it's gotten to the point where like people who are not tuned into politics explicitly are aware of Zoran Mamdani, even in the middle of Minnesota. Like, I live in Minnesota. I live in the Midwest, and people in the Midwest are paying attention to what's happening with Zoran Mamdani. And we'd been talking about like corruption and how like corruption in our politics is a really big problem, and like there needs to be accountability to set it right. And she was like, I like that Zoran Mamdani. I hope he stays clean. And I was like, I think he's gonna. Like, I think he's very keenly aware of the moment and keenly aware that he needs to be able to deliver materially for people, right? And this is a perfect example of what I was talking about with that woman cutting my hair, which is that like he is doing that. He is prioritizing improvements to housing infrastructure to make it easier for people to get housed. He's filling in those potholes. And by doing the work, he is, building up his credibility, building up his ability to then project political power into the future. And she asked me if like he was doing that so he could run for president. And because like that's the degree to which she, as somebody living in the Midwest who can't even pronounce his name, is like, that's the kind of guy I want running things. And like that is the entire Mamdani project. It is validating socialism as a governmental principle and showing what it is in practice. And it is a service-based ideology around the idea that people should be getting something for their tax dollars. Unfortunately, Zoran can't run for president. I did have to tell her that, but I also told her that if there's anybody who could be popular enough in the future to potentially get the, get the amendment changed so that he could run for president, it's Mamdani,
All over Harlem now, there is felt the same bitter expectancy, Baldwin wrote in 1948. There is nothing anyone can do about it. Today, too many New Yorkers feel that same bitter expectancy, the sense that nothing will ever get better as they watch the rent climb, as they stay up late trying to find a way to afford to stay in the city that they love. This crisis did not arrive all of a sudden. For centuries, New York City built enough housing to keep pace with...
Oh yeah, and J-Rock, you are absolutely right. Like, the reason he has the amount of credibility and clout he has right now is because Zoran has been delivering for folks. The key is going to be showing he can deliver for folks throughout his period of being mayor of New York City, right? That's going to be the key. He needs to show it consistently throughout his entire term, which is a big task.
Our population growth until the 19th.
A big task, I will say, made easier by the fact that he's maybe one of the only politicians I've ever seen get more popular after he's elected.
60s. Over the past 60 years, however, government helped create the housing crisis we now face through a series of choices. Beginning in 1961, zoning reform reduced our housing capacity by 80%. Further bureaucratic changes only exacerbated how difficult it became to build. In the 1980s, the Reagan administration implemented drastic cuts to our public housing system, leading to decades of NYCHA's decline. In the 1990s, new rent stabilization loopholes incentivized landlords to increase rents and push New Yorkers out of their apartments. These choices restricted growth and caused costs to balloon. They allowed bad landlords to neglect their tenants with impunity, and they turned a blind eye to crumbling public housing. These choices brought us to this moment. Today, we choose differently. If the absence of good government created the conditions we now face, the presence of good government can build the solutions we now need. I am proud to announce that New York City will propose, pursue, and deliver solutions to this crisis through our historic housing plan, block by block, a plan that matches not only our city's size, but the scale of our city's ambition. Before I share the details, I want to speak directly to every New Yorker who may be skeptical, because I know there are many. Some may be skeptical that the city can build, or that building is even the right solution. Others have watched the housing crisis worsen year after year, but have been left out of the conversation on how to fix it. And I know there are many who doubt that change can ever come. I want to speak to the skeptical New Yorker because I was once the skeptical New Yorker. Before I was mayor, before I was an assembly member, I worked as a housing counselor for New Yorkers facing foreclosure. Every day at our offices in Jackson Heights and Richmond Hill, I spoke to homeowners reckoning with the pain and complexity of this crisis. Rising costs, a daily fear of displacement, living under a cloud of anxiety that one-off emergencies could lead to mortgage delinquency. And every day after work, I came home to buildings going up in my neighborhood and neighbors asking who they were for. The conversation around housing was framed as a simple binary, a question reduced only to yes or no, a side you had to take between structures and people. Do you believe in building or do you believe in fighting for tenants? Should we build our way out of this or should we organize to preserve what we have? For a long time, the two were framed as mutually exclusive. I wanted to make a difference in the lives of New Yorkers who were facing this crisis.
Do you guys want to know something incredible, by the way? In the 3 districts that local New York City news covered, right? They went and polled. In New York's 7th district, Mamdani had a 91% approval rating amongst voters 18 to 39. 91% approval rating. Do you know how fucking insane that is? Like, even when you look at areas that swung for Andrew Cuomo in the mayoral election, like, Mamdani's approval is at like 66%, which is like the low. Yeah, he's doing really, really quite well. Even in, like, Bushwick, Williamsburg, Long Island City, his approval rating's like 77%. Like, it's nuts.
So I began to work for candidates who championed the tenant movement, a movement that won stronger rent stabilization laws and a right to counsel for tenants in housing court. I eventually ran for office myself and joined that fight in Albany, fighting for better protections and helping to win good cause eviction, a policy that prevents sudden displacement and price gouging in our city. As we made it easier for for New Yorkers to stay in their homes, one thing became increasingly clear. There was no way to drive down housing costs without also building more housing. I knew the lessons of Vienna, where for nearly a century, municipal government has built and financed housing directly. And data from other American cities told a clear story of what that building could lead to. Between 2015 and 2024, 120,000 homes were built in Austin. In December of 2021, Austin's median rent was $1,546. By this past January, it had fallen to $1,296, even as the city's population continued to grow. I saw these same patterns in Minneapolis and Seattle. It was clear, when it comes to housing, the binary we face is not between structures and people. It is not between building and organizing, nor is it between the tenants of today and the tenants of tomorrow.
And the thing is, I understand the comparisons to like Obama, except that this guy's actually walking the walk. Like Obama talked the talk, and he talked very, very well. But when it came time to actually fulfill promises, it was the kind of situation where he got into power and he burned his boats. And like, no one could follow in his footsteps. He burned his organizing apparatus and then did not fulfill the promises of hope and change.
I almost feel like people should start picnicking and laughing.
What is this? Protesters accuse New York City Zohran Mamdani of failing to protect Jewish New Yorkers. People should start picnicking and laughing. I mean, honestly, like, isn't that kind of what's already happened? Zohran Mamdani put like 800% more into anti-hate crime.
Vid of Mamdani talking about public housing in Vienna years ago.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Now he's mayor of NYC talking about housing in NYC based off of Vienna.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that Gravel Institute vid. From 5 years ago.
American housing is in crisis. Right now, up to 12 million Americans are behind an average of $5,800 on rent and risk eviction. With eviction moratoriums soon to expire, we're facing an unprecedented wave of evictions and foreclosures that will crash straight into millions of struggling families across the country. But the truth is, this crisis didn't begin with the pandemic. In fact,
he's really had a glow up in 5 years. Good for him.
Housing has been in crisis for a very long time. Even before the pandemic, in places like New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco, median rents for even one-bedroom apartments could approach $2,500 a month or more. About a third of people in Los Angeles spend a majority of their income on housing. In New York City, about 20% of all renters pay most of their income to their landlord. And in my district, Astoria, about a quarter of residents have to spend most of their paycheck on rent.
Like, this has been something he has cared about for a very long time. And I do like what he talks about later in this video.
100 years back in time, to take a look at just one example of how an alternative housing model got started in beautiful red Vienna. At the end of the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed, leaving behind a number of successor states, including modern-day Austria, home to the former imperial capital of Vienna, the 5th largest city in the world. Despite being the seat of an empire, the chaos of the war and decades of neglect had left the working class of Vienna in desperate circumstances. Inflation was rampant, jobs were scarce, social services were non-existent.
Let's be fair, his glow-up was #1 spice.
It's true.
Bring the flavor to the fish, bring the flavor to the rice. And hundreds of thousands of people were crammed into decaying tenements where overcrowding, disease, and violence were rampant. So it's no surprise that in 1919, at the first elections ever held in Austria where all adult citizens could vote, the Social Democratic Party swept into power at the municipal level on the promise of dramatic social and economic reform. And they delivered. The new government of Vienna implemented a huge range of services, including public health care and public child care. They built high-quality hospitals, schools, and recreational facilities. But their crowning achievement was an ambitious program of social housing, what Americans call public housing, that began in 1923 and saw 60,000 new apartments constructed in the first year of its existence, built by the government and financed by taxes on the rich. But these weren't the kinds of apartments you might picture when you think of public housing in the United States. Drab high-rises plagued by chronic neglect and underinvestment. Residents could enjoy leafy courtyards, wide-open spaces, and plenty of natural light.
Yeah, they were spaces worth a damn, right? Like, they were spaces built to be enjoyed. They were spaces built for families to live in. You know, like that was a key component of what Vienna did, right? We'll get back to his speech on housing now, but like, I want you all to take note. Like, we've figured out how to solve homelessness a long time ago. And you all have to really sit with, why haven't we continued to solve it today? Who does that benefit? It's the rich.
They had shared laundries, state-of-the-art kitchens, food co-ops, bathhouses, pharmacies, lecture halls, schools, and swimming pools. These apartments were designed to be both beautiful to look at and beautiful to live in, fostering a sense of shared community among the people who lived there. And the best part was that because the city didn't have to worry about making a profit, just about paying off their maintenance costs, these homes were both much nicer and much cheaper than what workers had previously known. In 1926, the average rent in Viennese social housing was about just 4% of a monthly wage.
Can you, just real quick, can you imagine, like, most people in America spend like half their paycheck on rent. Can you imagine what it would be like to spend only 4% of your paycheck per month on rent? Like just wrap your head around the idea of your monthly rent being reduced by 90%. That's just absolutely crazy.
The first 15 years after Austrian independence saw its capital transform from a symbol of urban blight into a beacon of socialist governance. It became known as Red Vienna, after the official color of the socialists who had pioneered these changes. And even—
Oh, whoops! The socialists did it? Never mind. We can't have that, not in capitalist America. Luckily, that guy who did that video would never create housing policy in somewhere like New York City, am I right? Anyway, back to this speech.
It is a far more basic one. It is between a government that debates and a government that delivers. We can keep people in their homes, and we can build the homes that they need to live in. We have spoken about this crisis long enough. It is now time to do something about it. Our housing plan meets this crisis with the scale and urgency it demands. It invests billions of dollars in new affordable housing production.
Hell yeah!
And it continues the vital work of protecting tenants from bad landlords and displacement. So let's get into it. The first plank of our plan is all about building. We have set two of the most ambitious housing targets in modern New York City history. First, we are delivering on a promise we made during the campaign. Over the next decade, city government will build 200,000 new, affordable, rent-stabilized homes. This historic production push will increase the number of homes for homeless New Yorkers by nearly 45%, helping us connect thousands of those in need with permanent housing. Second, I am proud to announce, for the first time in our administration, that we will preserve and stabilize an additional 200,000 homes.
So build 200,000 and preserve and stabilize an additional 200,000.
Together, these 400,000 homes will be affordable for working people, and they will be made possible by historic $22 billion capital investment over 5 years. When it comes to affordable housing, no plan of this scale has ever been imagined by a past mayor, let alone proposed. We are the largest city in the nation. We have the resources, the talent, and the will to achieve this. Expanding our housing supply will also kickstart our economy. As we build 200,000 new affordable homes, we will support an average of 30,000 good-paying jobs each year and generate 12,700 permanent jobs once these homes are completed.
Also, I remember in the debates, like his debate opponents were calling him insane for talking about wanting to build that many homes. Like they were talking about it like it's just an impossible thing to do, and here he is announcing that they're gonna fucking do it. It's wonderful. do not ever believe establishment politicians when they tell you what is and is not possible, because they're fucking liars.
There is no path to meeting our 200,000 goal of building new homes without meaningful changes to our city's zoning code. Last year, New Yorkers overwhelmingly approved ballot measures making it easier to build across our city. Our housing plan embraces these changes and commits to pursuing further reforms that not only make it easier to build, but help New Yorkers move into these homes faster. Our plan will pursue a multi-pronged strategy to make it easier for New Yorkers to buy a home, including creating hundreds of new affordable co-ops and community land trusts. And we will also make it easier for homeowners to stay in their homes as we combat deed theft and relaunch
It's
the
literally
mortgage.
just this meme about Mamdani actually doing things and corporate Dems losing their minds.
Dem leadership. Changing this is a difficult process. You fool. You rube. You utter infant. Give us between $5 and $50. Mamdani wiping grease off his hands. So it turns out there's a switch on this machine that puts it into either orphan shredding mode or free school lunch mode. Just had to flip it. Indeed.
Assistance program. Combined, these efforts will lead to growth beyond anything New Yorkers have seen in generations. For some, the dream of homeownership will finally be within reach. Others will be able to sleep easily in homes they no longer fear losing. The second plank of our housing plan includes some of the strongest and most expansive tenant protections anywhere in the United States of America.
Let's go!
There is a reason why I put tenants front and center on my first day in office, when I visited a long-neglected, rent-stabilized building and declared that we will not wait to deliver action. Nearly 70% of New Yorkers do not own their homes, and yet tenants helped to carry this movement to City Hall because they believed in a city that could actually fight for them, that could actually protect them from bad landlords, that could actually ensure that their struggles would shape the policies that impact their lives. This plan that we present today was guided by New Yorkers' testimony during our rental ripoff hearings, and it reflects their concerns and their needs. And as we empower tenants, we will place a special emphasis on those in the Bronx who have so long been excluded from investments, who have been subjected to acute neglect, and who have faced destructive fires at the highest rate in this city. I am proud to announce a legislative task force to overhaul our city's outdated housing maintenance code.
God, if you ever wanted to see Republicans absolutely lose their shit on behalf of landlords, the way they've responded to this has been truly next level.
When I say housing, you say maintenance code. We will catch problems proactively and prevent.
God, he's so goddamn charming too. Jesus.
Prevent them from becoming full-blown hazards, from day-to-day negligence to major breaches of fire code. We will also improve how 311 logs and investigates complaints. Starting on October 1st of this year, inspectors will investigate every single heat complaint the city receives.
That's right. Fucking scumbag landlords, he's coming for you. He's coming for you. Yeah, just take a quick look. Here's Fox News crapping their pants over this.
Of New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, there seems to be no such thing as a bad tenant. Or you can be late with the rent or just not pay for months on end. You can be dangerous, destructive, noisy. But the mayor is on your side. He has a new housing plan. It is pro-tenant. It is vigorously anti-landlord. It is all socialist politics. With his characteristic smile, he delivered another landlord-bashing program. Boil it down, and it amounts to a plan that would...
I love that the framing of this is blatantly, like, we should be more concerned with the poor landlord's profits than getting people housed, right? Like, oh, It is a crime that one landlord be deprived of a single dollar than to be forced to give housing to one of the wretched poor.
Seize properties from private landlords and transfer that property to renter-controlled cooperatives. In other words,
he's hypnotized you with his stunning good looks and scintillating personality.
The renters get the property when the landlord is deemed to be a deadbeat. Mandani encourages the formation of tenant unions to...
Oh no. People who take good care of their apartments should be able to control their apartments if they live in a fucking slum and their landlord isn't properly maintaining their unit. Oh no, the horror. Maybe you shouldn't fuck around if you don't like the consequences of finding out.
Snitch on property owners. He expects 300 of these building takeovers.
Jesus, I didn't watch this before we played it.
Snitch on property owners. He expects Downey encourage the renters get the property when the landlord is deemed to be a deadbeat. Mandani encourages the formation of tenant unions to snitch on property owners.
I love the framing of this as like, if you're in an apartment building and your landlord is trying to freeze you to death, you shouldn't snitch to the cops about it. like what? Wait a minute. You're telling me that in Mamdani's New York, if you tell the cops that your landlord is freezing you to death in your apartment, they'll actually come and do something about it? Wait, that's good though. That's a good thing.
And we will support New Yorkers as they organize with their neighbors. If you form a tenant union, the city will stand with you. We will deliver the accountability you deserve from your landlord by doing a roof-to-basement inspection of your building.
Hell yeah!
Finally, through our new citywide campaign, Fix the City, we will focus on the worst landlords in New York City. When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards.
That's right, motherfucker. He coming to take away from the landlords. Let's go.
Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits.
That's right, baby. We're not taking away the landlord's property and giving it to other landlords. We're giving them to nonprofits. We're giving them to the community to run. Let's go.
Nonprofits, or even the tenants themselves.
This is like, this is actual socialist policies. And like, genuinely, this is incredible. This is great. If a business fails to serve the public good, then the public should be able to step in the form of government to put an end to that abuse of power. Full stop.
The third core plank of our plan is years overdue. We will deliver the transformative investments that public housing has long needed, but not received. Our public housing system, the largest of its kind in the country, was born from Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia's conviction that government owed its people decent, dignified homes. NYCHA began as a testament to something great, that government can not only imagine a better life for those it serves, but that it can fulfill that vision. And yet that conviction has become a relic of the past. After decades of disinvestment, NYCHA tenants have come to expect that no matter who is in office, they will be overlooked. Their concerns will be ignored.
Leslie, congrats on your first affirmation appointment. Hell yeah.
That ends today. City Hall will rewrite a legacy of neglect with the largest city capital commitment to NYCHA in decades. $5.6 billion over 5 years. And we will do all of this while ensuring that NYCHA remains publicly owned and publicly operated. This is about putting city government in the driver's seat. This is about delivering the changes that New Yorkers have been demanding with little avail for decades. These funds will go towards comprehensive renovations guided by resident input. We will build on the success of the existing leak and mold call center and expand the model to other repairs. No longer will it take more than 400 days to fix an elevator in this city.
Hell yeah!
When NYCHA residents call for help, they will be able to expect immediate improvements. Longevity is the goal. This plan will reboot NYCHA as a public developer for the first time in generations. In doing so, it will equip our public housing system with a stream of revenue to sustain it well into the future. Each plank of this plan builds on the work that we have already advanced over the past 6 months. Since taking office, we have...
Yeah, like, the thing is, if you can make it work in New York City, one of the largest cities in the country, you can make it work other places too. You can make it work in mid-sized cities. You can make it work in small cities. You can make it work in towns. There's nothing special that prevents these policies from being implemented elsewhere.
Launched the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants and the Office of Deed Theft Prevention. We have cut red tape blocking affordable housing development. We have held bad landlords accountable to the tune of $65 million. And we have broken ground on thousands of affordable homes. Today, we make it official. We will finish the work we have started. We will prove that government can deliver on the solutions to the toughest problems, not just debate them. I will close with this.
If you make it work there, it works everywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.
New York, New York, it's a heck of a town.
So often when confronted with intractable challenges, the world has looked to New York City to show the way. We have built great things before. Skyscrapers that rise into the clouds, grand bridges, libraries, and museums, the most ambitious public housing developments in the nation, a team that can come back from 22 points with a little more than 6 minutes left in the first game. Block by block, we will build once again. And we will prove that the belief we hold that every person deserves a dignified home is more than an ideal. It is a responsibility that government can and that government will fulfill. Beginning today, we will no longer speak in the language of promise. We will speak in the language of present. We will build more homes. We will protect tenants. We will deliver record funding to NYCHA. Let the largest city in the nation deliver the largest municipal housing transformation this country has ever seen. With a history like the one that we have in this city, it is tempting to believe that New York City's best days are behind us. But we know that that is not the case. They are waiting to be built. So let us build them together, block by block.
Dude is killing it. Like, this is the future of democratic politics. This is the future of leftist politics in this country. This is the path forward. Right? Like, this is, to, like, put it in some biblical terms, a John the Baptist
New York
situation.
deserves a dignified not one who grabs women, the Italian way.
Indeed! Exactly, Sake. It's why we got that Andrew Cuomo out of there. But, like, he is establishing that this works. He is establishing that leftist governance is feasible, that it works on a large scale. There is no reason, there is no conceivable argument that if he can make it work in New York, others can't make it work elsewhere. Like, the entire premise here is that he is able to essentially craft and carve a way forward for the left. We don't even really have to have this democratic civil war because this is the path of least resistance. Like, certainly there will be resistance on the on the part of like corporations, on the part of billionaires, on the part of the wealthy, but like this is the path forward. If you are someone who is actually beholden to your voters, actually beholden to the people who put you into office, this is the path forward. Because this is a path that benefits everybody. Everybody being housed is good for everybody. Everybody getting healthcare, it's good for everybody. Everybody having like the ability to walk to their grocery store, having the ability to eat, that is good for everybody. Like, we need to bury the politics of the past that prioritize the wealthiest people to ever exist over the vast majority of everyone else. Like, we cannot be doing politics as usual in the neoliberal fashion because, frankly, there's no more runway there. You know, it ended in a brick wall for society. And only the people at the tippy top, the billionaires, are thinking, hey, maybe we can get over that brick wall. Maybe we're high enough on the, on the ladder that when the wall gets hit, we're just going to keep on sailing forever. But the better solution is, hey, how about we don't all hit the wall at like 700 miles an hour? And instead, we all get to live. We all get to contribute. We all get to thrive and survive and build a happiness for ourselves. That's the promise of leftist politics in this country. And the panic that we're seeing over folks like Tallarico, for example, taking power away from Republican-held centers in Texas, or the panic we're seeing from Democrats over Graham Plattner coming into power in Maine. Like, this panic is stemming from the same place. It stems from the same place from establishment Democrats who oppose up-and-coming leftists. It stems from the same place when Republican institutional power opposes its own degradation of power. Like, it comes from the corporate donors. It comes from the billionaires. It comes from the oligarchs. They are the ones who are trying to preserve their institutional power that they have spent years, decades building on both sides of the aisle. And so when we are looking forward, it's not a path forward that is independent of oligarchs and billionaires and corporations just on its own, because you could conceive of a conservative politics that survives beyond an oligarchic fostering or corporate fostering. But our path is to the left. Our path is to democracy. Our path is to all of us together succeeding. And that's where I think the Democratic Party is called to go. Even as they pull out the knives to try and stab the forces on the left that are trying to carry the party over the finish line in so many of these different races, whether it's Abdul al-Sayed or Plattner or some of these other folks, if like Tom Steyer is right now getting a lot of establishment Dems consolidating against him in California. That's the thing, Dragonfly. Right now, they've hit a point of no return. There was a point at which oligarchic money and corporate power did have enough knives to kill off any kind of left-leaning momentum, any kind of left-leaning movement of strength. That time is gone, and some of them know that. Some of them know that, and they're just fighting to cling on for another, political cycle. Right now, too many of us are getting too involved, and that's only going to become a worse and worse problem for them as time goes on, beyond just the midterms and going into 2028, and beyond 2028. Too many people have seen how the sausage gets made in Washington, D.C., and they're sick of it. So, anyway, this has been a really long segment about, the current state of things. But if I had to make a wide-ranging assessment here, the wind is blowing in the progressive direction. The wind is blowing in the socialist direction, and people are taking note. People who are members of the establishment, people you would think would never begin even shifting slightly to the left, are now openly embracing things that just a handful of months ago seemed politically impossible. Seemed outside of the realm of what can be. And I think that it's really interesting to see, because the reason establishment folks are shifting in that way within the Democratic Party is not because they want to. It's out of a perceived necessity to do so. Because they are feeling pressure from the left, and they are feeling pressure from the current fascist administration that they have kind of plodded along beside complicitly for too long. So I do think that there is a silver lining to this, and that there is a reckoning coming within the Democratic Party and within wider American politics at large. And, I think we can all be a part of it. Join your local Dems, join your local DSA, okay? Like, now is the time to do that, because this political stuff, it's going to boil over at some point. We need as many people as we can get in the room arguing for progressive solutions, arguing for socialist solutions, arguing for working class solutions. So join your local Dems, join your local DSA. If you don't know where to start, you can join our Discord. You can reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. You can reach out to GamerG for help joining your local DSA. You can also come over to riverboat.gg. You can usually find one or both of them over there. Dragonfly is actually there right now. But we need people to get involved. We need people to make their Democrats more progressive, more working class, more better, more socialist even. And we need people to make their DSAs more effective, right? I will also be talking in the future here. I don't know when this video will come out, but I'll be talking in the future about how you can get involved as we get closer to the midterms, how you can get involved with door knocking, phone banking, getting involved with campaign work. I had a meeting recently to talk about how to help you guys have like an easy pipeline to get involved with different campaigns you believe in, regardless of where they are in the country. So we will be talking more about that next Monday, which, I don't know, June 1st. All that being said, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this whole Democratic Civil War, because I do think that there are some people who boil it down to, it's the fighters versus the, curl up and hunker downers. And there are some people who are saying, it's working class versus oligarchs. And some people who are talking about like it's democracy versus fascism. I think it's multiple at once. So let me know what you think in the comments. And also, folks, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. Check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. It is sexy, non-tucking lingerie. Check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. Link down in the description. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat deck is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.